Hello everyone, it's Shannon here. Thank you so much for joining me today. In this video, we're going to create a fun interactive card. We're going to create a full panel shaker card with the new graduation combo set. This card can be personalized to your graduate school colors, and I'm also going to share with you lots of tips and tricks for working with the graduation panel die. To start today's card, I have 3 A2 panels. I have 2 that are gray and 1 that is black. I picked some really basic colors because I wanted to make this card suitable for any graduate. I'm going to die cut one of the gray panels and the black panel with the graduation panel die. Just going to center it here on this gray panel. And once I get it centered, I'll then grab a couple pieces of tape and kind of hold that die and paper together and then run it through my die cutting machine. I'm going to pop out all these little tiny graduation hats and save them. I'm going to actually use those later. And then I'm going to run my black panel through and do the same. I actually didn't save the black graduation caps, but you could if you wanted to use 2 colors in your shaker card. So now I'm going to actually rotate the gray panel and place it behind the black. By rotating it, I am going to change the look of these graduation caps. I'm going to make them look a little dimensional. So I rotated it and slid the gray panel down, and as you can see here, it kind of creates like the top part of the cap. And now I'm going to show you one other kind of look. You can slide it up, and then that actually kind of distinguishes the bottom portion a little bit. I actually prefer sliding it down and creating the cap. I think that just has a more natural look. I think the cap kind of always looks like it stands out a little bit more than the kind of the part that actually sits on your head. And so I slid it back down and then just traced with my pencil the edge of my black panel, and then I went ahead and cut it with a paper trimmer. It basically cuts just above the little stitched line that the die creates in the panel. So now I'm going to move on to adding a little shadow to what is now going to be the edge of the top of the cap. So I'm just taking a Copic marker here and just coloring right along the bottom of these caps that are flipped around. And this is really easy, simple coloring, just kind of coloring just beyond the edges of the cap. I want it a little bit longer. That way, because if you put the top plate on here, you'll see that the top of the caps are a little bit wider than the base, obviously, so you have to go beyond the base. And once I finish doing that little bit of marker, I'll hold up to the camera here once I get my layers together so you can really see the effect. That little bit of shadowing just makes that top cap pop even more. So really simple to do, but adds really a dimensional look to those little graduation caps. And that's my panel is basically complete. I now just have to glue them together. So I'm going to start by gluing the black panel on first. I'm going to use some liquid glue here and just run it around all the edges and vertically down. And then I will line it up with my gray panel, my die cut gray panel. Once I get it in place, I'll then flip it over, and you can see how we have that little gap at the top because again we did shift it downward and then trimmed off the overhang. Again, I added adhesive to the back side of these 2 panels and then just adhered it onto my plain gray panel. And here's our finished look. Really cool dimensional caps. Of course, you could just stop right there, but I'm going to move on and actually create a shaker card with that panel. But first I'm going to stamp my sentiment real quick. I grabbed a sentiment from the graduation sentiment stamp set included in the graduation combo. I put down some anti-static powder because I'm going to heat emboss this. First stamped it in VersaFine Onyx Black ink, then just dipped it into some clear embossing powder, and I'm just going to heat set this. This is just going to give it a nice shine. Now that I have my sentiment stamped, I'm going to die cut it out. I'm using a frame die from the new Classic Frames die set. I love this little set, very handy to have, and I love this rounded rectangle with a stitched border. Now that it's die cut, I'm going to stamp this little cap here, also from the graduation sentiment stamp set. I'm going to ink it up in a gray. This is Waffle Flowers Like a Pro. Now that that's stamped, I'm going to move on to creating my full panel shaker. I have a sheet of acetate here that's 5 1/4 by 6 1/2, and I'm going to score it on at a half inch on all 4 sides. As I'm scoring all my sides, I'm being careful where I touch my acetate. I'm trying to be careful not to somehow kind of get fingerprints all over it or scratch up the front of it. Acetate can be kind of finicky to work with, so I'm just holding it on that 1/2 inch tab, which I will later fold over so it'll be on the back. So now that that's all scored, I have 1/4 inch score tape here, and I'm just going to cut strips and place it at the edge of each one of these tabs. I like to have the shorter sides have the score tape a little bit shorter. Now that my score tape's on, I can kind of put this together. I'm going to remove the backing on my score tape, and then I'm going to fold over one of the long sides here. You could really start anywhere, but I do like to start with the longest sides first. Then I'll start removing the score tape on the other 3 sides. I'm going to leave the top open. I'm not going to seal that yet because that's where I got to put in all of our sequence. So I'm just going to fold it over, use my scoring tool to really seal it and get a good hold, and I'll do this last tab here, kind of fold that over, and then grab my score tool and really press down. So here's my acetate pocket so far. Still have that one side open. After I've folded my sides down, you can see you kind of get like a little overlap part here on the corners, and sometimes that's visible from the front. So I just trim those at an angle a little bit, and that will remove any of that acetate being visible from the sides. And now I've grabbed some sequins and my gray graduation caps, and I'm just going to mix that up with this little kind of clear sequins mix here, and then I'm just going to pour it inside that open side of my acetate pocket. And once I get that in there, and the nice thing about these full panel shaker cards, you don't need a lot of sequins to fill these up. So now that I've got that kind of full, I'm going to just remove that backing on my last tab and then fold it over. And once again, I'll use my scoring tool to really get a good seal, and then I'll grab my scissors just to kind of clean up those edges a little bit. And that's basically my full panel shaker. There are lots of ways to make full panel shakers. This is just one way that I really like to do it. And now we're going to move on to just finishing up this card. I'm going to add some tape to the back side of my sentiment and just center this and place it right on the front of my shaker. Once I have that in place, I'm going to flip this whole panel over, my whole shaker over, and actually adhere it on to my card base. So I have an A2 top folding white card base. Just going to stick that right on there, and that will complete my card. I'll now hold my card up to the camera so you can get a good look at this shaker card. Really had fun creating this. Love the little layers that we created just by shifting our graduation panel and adding that little bit of Copic to the edge. I think that just adds a lot of dimension to those graduation caps. And you could just, stack those panels and not even create a shaker card, just leave it at that. But of course I have to gild the lily, so I did make these into shaker cards. Here's my second card I created. This one has school specific colors. I just want to show that you can kind of customize this design too and make it those school colors, which is a really fun way to personalize. I hope you guys enjoyed today's card and video. If you'd like any more information on the products I use, please check out the links below in the description. You can also follow me on Instagram or check out my blog. I'll share those links as well. And if you like this video, I so appreciate if you subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.